Yeah, I'm just studying the speed and growth and development of the this deadly nightshade. It's Sunday today, so it's been 2 weeks and 4 days. So I'm pretty impressed. So I do think the idea of this is going to grow to its size in about 3 weeks, as the previous one. It might be pretty close, maybe a month. So it'll grow to like full size in probably 3 weeks to a month. I like the dark green colour of the leaves. It's very interesting. And I'm also interested in it because of its stature, because I want to compare it with Drosera Gigantea over in Canada Swamp that used to come up to my 10-year-old nipple height. And so I've actually gone back to old photographs and measured myself standing against my parents' old house in Perth, Western Australia. In it was Parkwood originally, and then became part of Linwood, and then Linwood became so large that it's now called West Linwood. So what used to be Parkwood is now West Linwood. That's because of the growth and development after basically America's Cup. It just went crazy over there, and of course then you had WA Inc. and all things like that. So and now we got this gold scandal where the Chinese want 9 billion back because they diluted down the gold from the WA Mint. Oh God, you don't want to do something like that. You don't want to mess around with standards. That's an important thing. Standards are important, and especially if you start messing around with them. Anyway, so I'm always also interested in the colour of this because, Drosera Gigantea is the largest, most robust sundew in the world, and it has this sort of oddly worldly glaucous or bluey green colour to most of the plant. It starts off with a very purpley red stipulate base, goes for this glaucous, almost turquoisey glaucous sort of thing. Main part of the plant up to orangey, already orangey to yellow branches to the traps, which are sort of golden yellow, very similar to the golden yellow you get on some of the larger forms of Drosera binata. Some of the larger forms of Drosera binata that don't usually set seeds, so whether there's some genetics going on there, some related genetics or something, or there's some very ancient back hybridization that have gone on like 500,000 years ago or something, I don't know. Whether these plants were a lot larger, many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years ago, because it was very strange. Every time I was in Canada Swamp, every day, sometime during the day, I was usually there, 9:30 to 10 o'clock. My mum, we pick up donuts on the way, and we stop, we have a coffee and a donut or something, and then I go out for 2 or 3 hours, come back for lunch, have a sandwich, then go out again, and by about 4 o'clock we'd be going home, sort of thing. But sometime during that day, even with my mum's hand-me-down Wellington boots, the Dunlop Wellington boots, which lasted 30 years, it's amazing, whereas the second lot I got only lasted one single season, so you can see the difference in the quality of the rubber. Original Dunlop will last you 30 years, but it's almost like it's inbuilt redundancy these days, the old light bulb conspiracy sort of thing. Anyway, so sometime during the day I would stub my toe against the base of one of these stipulate buds sort of thing, and it would hurt, even though my toes were in my mum's hand-me-down Wellington boots or gum boots or galoshes, whatever you want to call them. They're just made by Dunlop, and it would actually hurt. They was that sturdy in the ground. They were like rebar in the ground, and a bit thicker than the average texture felt tip pen sort of thing, but not quite as big, not quite as wide as one of those texture ones. The standard steel, not steel, aluminium tube sort of things. So somewhere between the two, between the average texture felt tip pen and the aluminium tubed ones, which were a lot thicker, somewhere between those sort of thing, in sort of thickness, but more towards the standard texture felt tip pen sort of thing. A little bit thicker than that. So, in the second year I was at Canada Swamp, when I was 10 years old, because I got into CPs when I was 8. Saw the glid at Cannister Swamp the first time I went to Cannister Swamp when I was 9, and then of course the following year I got interested in seeing, how deep the the tubers were down the ground, and I got down to a hole with my arm up to my armpit, and I was nowhere close, but I could tell by the tapering of the stem of the Drossa, the tapering of the stem going into the ground, roughly where it ought to be, and it sort of matches up with the comments made in the Bulbous, Cormous and Carnivorous-Plant book. Richard Sullivan has got my copy over in New South Wales. Hopefully, when he shuffles off this mortal coil, it'll come back to me via his will or something, from his estate or something. But I loaned it to him. Jesus, when was that? Back in the 80s? He's had it for half a lifetime, basically. Anyway, in there you'll find out they got photographs. The authors there, Kingsley Dixon and Pate, dug down to see what it was like, and they spent 3 or 4 hours, I think they mentioned in the book, digging down this thing, and the tubers were like 2 meters down on the interface between the sand and the clay interface sort of thing, and they're like hand-sized potato-like tubers sort of thing, and that's quite understandable, because Cannister Swamp, they used to go dormant in around about the first week of December. They die right back around about that time, if it was a good year sort of thing, and because they die all the way back down 2 meters, of course, through 2 meters of sand. Because when I came across the border here, let's just say to people like the late Fred Howe, they were trying to growing them in buckets, and I said, no, the basic bare minimum has got to be it's got to be a dustbin. Start off with a dustbin, don't go from a bucket up to a dustbin, start off from a dustbin. That's how but you've got to understand the growth, because it dies back 2 meters, then comes back from this hand-sized potato-like tubie, as we call them, tubers, all the way through that sand to emerge very early on as a stem in the season, and grow erect and grow up to this sort of stature, up to, as I said, my nipple height as a 10-year-old child, which I can measure against photographs of my old parents' house over there in WA sort of thing. People like Brian Parker know what I'm talking about, and probably can go back to my old house and measure it for me if he gets permission from the new owners with a tape measure. And I can say, count so many bricks up to this photograph that I'm standing next to the bricks, and tell me what the exact measurements are in centimetres sort of thing. And we'll convert it to feet and inches for the Americans. That's a joke, sorry. But so the largest, most robust sundew in the world grows very fast. But the reason I'm interested in this dark colour is because if you go back to some of these old National Geographics, I better put this on spot colour because you won't be able to see it otherwise. Okay, spot colour. Yeah, the camera's playing up. I can't get the colour. So this is May 1953. There's an article here when they go out, looking at. But there's one, if I can find it, with one holding this one-handedly, somewhere in here. I should have had a place marker, shouldn't I? But somewhere in here. They actually have a Venus flytrap somewhere in here, in one of these photographs. It was probably in the back end of these things. And a picture, and they have here we go. So we've got minor, sort of senior, minor, intermediate, but they got this one here with a Venus flytrap. And what's very odd is the petioles are very dark green, a sort of greenness like this that you get here. But the traps are the normal sort of golden yellowy green. So you can't say that it's a mistake of the colour processing or printing of this magazine. That is true. And you've seen old lithographs when they almost like show bluey purples to some of the Venus flytrap, and you think, well, that's just, they made an error. But back in those days, they used to go out with a grid with all the colours listed as numbers, so they would paint by numbers. So you got to give them their due that they probably wouldn't have got the colours wrong if they were painting by numbers, sort of thing, you know. Yeah. Anyway, it's like playing music by colour. You know, you never get a colour wrong. You never forget a colour. You know, even though old people with Alzheimer's, if you ask them what colour that is or what colour is the sky, they won't say brown or something like that. You know, unless they're totally insane or something. But then again, back here we got this Carnivorous-Plant from 1986, and some of these plants in here have got the similar green colour as that one there. So you know. So these are separated by years apart, and you've got the same sort of colour on the petioles in some of these plants in the pot. But the people worked out these were actually ripped out of the wild, because they worked out by the what do you call it, companion plants in here and moss and things like that. They worked out that these were actually ripped out from the wild. That's probably why they've got this wild colour to them, you know, as I showed there. So yeah, my old friend Donald Schnell, one of his spoken word cassettes, he talks about he being rung up in the middle of the night. I think it was 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning or something outlandish like that, and some bloke yelling on the other end of the phone from Holland saying, demanding, I think it was 500,000 Venus flytraps. He needed 500,000 Venus flytraps straight away. I know you can get them for me or something. I don't know whether it was like a CIA, FBI setup, I don't know, but you never know these days. But it was something outlandish. Yeah, I mean, Don Snow's a total conservationist. He'd never do something like that, you know, like me, you know. But I'm a creationist now. I want to create habitat. I want to learn how to create habitat to grow the plants that you want to grow, where you want, when you grow, where they want to grow. Because I want to know all those things, you know, where they grow, when they grow, why they grow, and all that sort of thing, and what controls growth and development, and blah, blah, blah. And can we put it all together, all the bells and whistles, and grow them much, much bigger than they do in the wild, which is the whole point of science. You know, once you know what's going on, you can tweak everything, and the climate, the temperature, everything, you know. Give them exactly what they need and better, I suppose, and... as I said, so by 3 weeks to a month, it should be somewhere up to there, sort of thing. And as I said, Drosera Gigantea used to come up to my 10-year-old nipple height. So if you've got access to a 10-year-old child somewhere, 10-year-old male child, just... I don't know. I don't want you to run after them with a tape measure, but, you know, if they walk near a bricked building or something, take note of where their nipple height is to the bricks, and then sneak out later on and just measure that height with a tape measure. And that's how high Drosera Gigantea used to grow at Carrington Swamp, on this very deep sand, around about 2 meters deep, sort of thing. So anyway, I think that's enough for this one, and see you on the other side. Bye. In about another week or so's time, we'll see how big it's got. Okay, see ya.